It is time for our June reading wrap-up. My co-host today is Bogi, and this is because he's having one of those days where I cannot be left unsupervised. He must follow me room to room, spot to spot. So I've got to get to work because clearly my supervisor is not laying off my back today. Without further ado, let's get into the June reading wrap-up. If you haven't been here before, I do my wrap-ups like this. I do the best of the best first. That way you can just get the best of the best, the good stuff, and hit on your way if you want. Or if you want to keep watching, I then do what I call the borrow it books that were just okay, middle of the road reads. Then I go into skip it books that I do not recommend you read or waste your time or your money on. And yeah, so you can watch as much or as little as your heart tells you to. It's really up to you. Hi, okay, it's me from the future, and I realized, like in the middle of filming this, that I did not tell you my number totals, which I always do. So I read a total of 12 books for a total of 3,971 pages. Okay, all right, back to the intro. June was an incredible reading month. I felt so lucky to read so many 5-star reads, which is really rare for me. You might notice that I don't just go around handing out 5 stars, okay? So I was really pleased to have so many on my list this month of us being 5 stars, and I'm going to do the 5-star books first because it just makes the most sense. The first of those was Devolution by Max Brooks, which I did a full review video on because I loved it that much. It basically wasn't even a review so much as me just saying how amazing it was and how much I loved it. But you can still watch it if you want. I'll leave it linked in the cards above and below. And I just want to say in this wrap up that basically, yes, it's amazing. And it may be a story about Bigfoot, but it's really about humanity and our more primal natures, and a very interesting collision of different generational cultures that I found fascinating. It was so good. I think a book like this in the sci-fi genre has not been done really since Jurassic Park, or at least not that comes to my mind. I think it has the potential to be huge, and it has already been optioned for film, so I can't wait for that. I hope they do it justice. Next on the 5-star reads is Sea Wife. This is by Amity Gaige, and it really surprised me how much I liked this because at its description it sounds very basic and not even like something that I would really pick up on the regular. It surprised me so much. It's really a book about a suburban family who decides to leave everything to travel around the world on a sailboat, and it's about that, but it's really about the dynamics of relationship between this mother and father, and I thought it was an excellent examination of our times in a fascinating way, where she's taken this husband and wife and their children and their relationship to not only each other but to the world, to their neighbors, to their friends. It's a really relevant, engaging concept that she put them in this situation, and it is about their sailboat trip, but it's really about their clash of belief systems and so much more. I thought it was truly fantastic. I loved it. It surprised me, and I think it's a masterpiece. You can see the attention to detail in the writing. If you're looking for that, it's every punctuation mark, everything is on purpose, it's intentional, and you can tell that she just has a vast understanding of the craft of writing. The third 5-star read that I got to this month was Educated by Westover, which came out in 2018, and thanks to a neighbor, I finally got my hands on it after hearing about it for so long. 2 years, it's not that long. I've gone longer without reading a hyped book, but I was very glad that I read it. It was a fascinating book, a fascinating look into the life, this memoir of a woman who grew up in a very secluded, almost extremist, survivalist family, and how she came to be educated at an Ivy League school, and how she kind of left that world but is still grappling with what that means as far as family. I think it was a wonderfully done memoir, and I did a proper review video on it, which I will also link as well if you're curious, but the short answer of is it worth the hype and should you read it is, in my opinion, yes. This is a book that I stumbled across. It felt like it kind of found me, and while it is kind of controversial to some people, it seems like some people love it and some people think it's the worst thing ever. I am one of those people who kind of appreciate the nuance in things. There's a lot of middle area between this point and that point, and I think that this book does that really well. It's a book on kind of traditional femininity, relationships, womanhood, and it's kind of a message that I don't feel like I get and that I was seeking out. I think sometimes because I'm like a really interested person in self-development. Like I have a lifelong pursuit of being better, and I sometimes feel that in regards to womanhood and femininity, I don't have a lot of examples in the modern culture that make sense for me and my values. So I kind of seek that out a little bit recently. It's just been something that's been on my mind. I found this book, which is an updated version of this author's mother's book from the 60s that talks about these same topics, but what Dixie has done is tried to update them and taken the timeless lessons from the book from the 60s, where some things are kind of outdated or might be taken a different way now. She's tried to update that and taken the timeless aspects of it and put it into a book for what's worked for her in her womanhood and her marriage, what's worked for her mother and her sisters and some of her children. So it's kind of like advice that you'd want a family person, a mentor to give you, and you can take from it what you will, get rid of what doesn't make sense for you. But for me, I really, really liked this book. It surprised me how much I liked it. I didn't know what it was really going to be going into it with so much polarity regarding it, but I really enjoyed it. Parts of it really, really spoke to me, and I might do a dedicated review video about kind of what I learned from it. We'll see. What I do want to say briefly about the quality of print is that I did listen to the audiobook and read this back and forth, and I actually really liked the audiobook quite a lot. You can get it on Audible, and I liked this as well because so many of the points I wanted to come back and reference and really marinate in and think about what I thought from it, So I just want to say that this is definitely not the highest quality formatted book ever, but it's kind of got a self-published vibe to the the paragraph spacing and stuff like that. Not a big deal at all, but I just wanted you to know what that's like, because some people care and some people don't. So there you go. Next up in Best of the Best is a book called In 5 Years. That is a women's fiction that I also did a review video on. Really proud of myself for being on top of review videos last month. But it is about a woman who is kind of one of those planners in life. She's got her 5-year plan. She knows what she wants. She's about to be engaged and married to this guy she's known for years. And then she has a dream where she is 5 years in the future, and it's completely different to what she expected. And she can't get the vision of that dream out of her head, and it kind of derails the life plan she had going, and it really strangely crosses with what's going on in her actual life and her relationships. I thought it was going to be a book like a typical women's fiction about romance, but it really wasn't that at all. And if you want more details, definitely watch the review video, but it surprised me how good it was. And whether or not you like the main character or hate her, it really does make you think. So it makes you consider her actions. And if a book can make you think that much in a plot that normal sounding, then that's talent, you know what I mean? So I thought it was great. Next up in Best of the Best is a book that I've been meaning to read for 10 million years. Not at all an exaggeration. It is Bird by Bird. This is a very popular, very widely read book on writing. Just like the subtitle suggests, Bird by Bird, some instructions on writing and life. And that's exactly what it is. It's her version, her experience of writing. It's not about technicalities, but it is about the feeling of writing. And I felt very seen by her, particularly the beginning of the book. I didn't agree with everything she had to say. That's not the point of this book. The point is to say, here's my experience writing. Here's what I've encountered with other people I know who've written and who practice this craft. And she just sort of presents it in a very honest way, which I really, really appreciated. Also, it's funny. Also, I've heard the audiobook is amazing and hilarious. So if you kind of like this, it's like a wandering, almost mythical, almost skipping style. Her cadence is very interesting. She definitely has a unique voice, and I think you'll really like it. Again, it's not about technicalities. It's more about the emotions behind writing, the thought process behind it. I really liked it. So it's a win for me. Last up in Best of the Best is Craigslist Confessional, a collection of secrets from anonymous strangers. The author herself sent me this book, and if you like Post-Secret and Humans of New York and real human stories, then you absolutely need to get this because it's kind of a genius idea. Basically, the author of this book was inspired by a conversation she had with a homeless man, and she felt something about that situation, that they were strangers, made them confess things to each other that they would probably never confess to people they knew and loved. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but it is kind of a strange phenomenon. So she decided to listen for a year. She put an ad on Craigslist that said something like, "Tell me your story," and people replied. And this is 40 of the responses she got. She would meet them in a coffee shop and then write down whatever they had to say about their life. It was stories about some really dark, gritty things. This is a Craigslist ad after all. Some stories of hope, but it is definitely on the darker side. So keep that in mind if you decide to pick it up. And I hope she makes this a series, because I think it's genius. I think it's fascinating. Like, are you not fascinated by this whole project idea? It's pretty cool. That is it for best of the best. So if that's all you wanted, then you can skedaddle on out of here, and no hard feelings, man. But if you want to go into the middle of the road books and the skip it books so that you know what to maybe avoid, then let's get into it. For the borrow it books, middle of the road reads, I have First Up in Her Shadow, which is kind of like a fun middle of the road read. Like, if I'm comparing it against a 5-star like literary masterpiece, then obviously it's not going to be as good, right? But for a 3-star level of book, I thought it was really fun. It's about a woman who basically gets knocked up by this guy, all right? I'm just going to say it. She gets knocked up by this guy, and he's really rich, and he's just recently divorced, but she thinks it's all going to work out. Like, he's going to take her to his fancy house in his fancy neighborhood, and she'll fit in no problem. Well, naturally, that's not what happens, and a dead body shows up, and it's all very dramatic, and kind of like watching a trashy television show where you know that things don't make sense, like the character motivations don't make sense, but you don't really care because it's just fun. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's how I felt about it. Next, in a similar vein, was Dead Lake, which I read on Kindle on NetGalley. And it's a horror novel, really simple story, really fun for like a quick fix of horror. It's this artist, and she needs to finish this artistic project for her first like gallery viewing. And she can't get it together, okay? She just cannot make herself do it. So she retreats to a cabin that her uncle owns. It's the only cabin on this really kind of remote lake, and weird stuff kind of starts happening. You know what I mean? So I thought it was pretty fun, okay, but I also thought it was very, very simplistic, but I actually thought the plot could have been fleshed out to be an epic, awesome horror novel, but it wasn't. And that's okay. Like, that's not a bad thing. I think it's great if a plot is complex enough to be eloquent if you want it to be, and also be simple. So, I mean, it's not really a criticism. It's just like hey, that's what it is, just a quick fix of horror fiction. Next up, in middle of the road, but kind of leaning towards skip it for me personally, is The Eighth Sister by Robert Dugoni. Robert Dugoni mostly writes like political thrillers or crime thrillers, but I actually fell in love with his work from a more literary fiction he did called The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, which I loved, and my husband read and he loved, thought it was great. So ever since then, I've been slowly reading Dugoni, but they're a different genre, and I don't know, they just have not worked for me yet. I don't know if it's this genre in particular or this style that I just cannot get into no matter how much I try. He's not the only author in this particular, I don't even really know how to describe it to you, type of genre that I just can't get into it. I just can't, and I don't know what that is. I can see the appeal for other readers, so it is a middle of the road book. Like, I get it, but it's just not for me, dude. It's not for me. This one's about a guy who's in his 60s, and he's like supposed to be retiring, but then some business stuff goes bad, and he gets called back in from the CIA, which is who he used to work for, to go take care of this situation unfolding in Russia. And of course, they've got like plants hidden to spy on them. And I don't know, you guys, I just didn't care about any of the characters. The moments that I was supposed to feel like tense or care about something bad happening, I didn't care at all. So maybe I'm just cold, heartless, and the worst person ever. Or maybe this book just wasn't as good as Dugoni's other stuff. I don't know, just saying. Last up of the books I'm going to share with you today is Sorcery for Beginners. This, when I first reviewed it, I put it as a borrow it book, but now that I'm thinking about it, I feel no warmth towards this whatsoever, other than it was a cute idea. So it's definitely on the edge of borrow it or skip it. It's a book for kind of, I would say, preteens. It's not really an adult. It's like children's fiction, and it's about sorcery for beginners. It's kind of told as if it's an instruction manual telling you a story in order to teach you about magic. There's like really pretty illustrations. The cover is obviously a stunner, but the concept reads more like a movie script, like a screenplay, than a book. And that really tends to happen when screenplay writers start to write books. Like, it's interesting how, like, the nuance of how different they are, because they really are, and you can tell one way or the other. It's so interesting. So yeah, it didn't really work for me, but I don't think it's the worst thing ever. Like, I don't think it was really bad. I think if you were like 11, 10 or 11, it might be kind of fun for you, but there's better books in this genre, and it's such a hard genre to break into, man, because, I mean, so many people have done it so well. So definitely, for me. I didn't have any true hated it, skip it books this month, which is pretty incredible. And I'm super grateful for how many great reads I had. Can you believe that? Like, so many 5 stars, so many 4 stars. It's kind of mind-boggling to me, and I'm going to take a moment right now to appreciate how good a reading month June was. Okay, moment over. I hope you have enjoyed this reading wrap up, and Beau has clearly given up on me because he is passed out on the floor completely asleep with his stuffed raccoon, couldn't care less. So, at least my supervisor's off my back, this wrap-up's done, and I hope you found a book that intrigued you. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this video, give it a quick thumbs up before you head on out of here. Drop a comment below. And if you're new here but you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead, press that subscribe button, because I am your girl for all things bookish and thoughtfulness and nerdy intellectualness. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.